The alien city was cold and silent. Towering metallic structures loomed over the streets, casting long dark shadows on the cracked pavement. In the heart of the city, a large circular building stood like a fortress. Inside, a meeting room, full of powerful alien leaders buzzed with low, menacing voices, their bodies towering over the human who had entered their presence. Jara stepped forward, her footsteps echoing in the cold, sterile space. She was trembling, but her eyes were steady. Clad in ragged clothes, she looked nothing like the proud woman she once was. Her hair, once long and dark, was now dull and tangled, and her face was marked by the hardships of survival. Yet, she still carried a quiet strength, a strength she desperately hoped would be enough. The alien leaders, tall and intimidating, watched her closely, their alien eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. They did not speak at first. They simply stared, their expression unreadable. Jara's heart raced in her chest as she looked at them. She had no choice but to continue. "My children are well behaved," Jara said, her voice soft but firm. "I can be a good wife to you. Please, save us." Her words hung in the air, as cold and hollow as the room around them. The alien leaders didn't react. They didn't show any sign of understanding. Jara swallowed hard, trying to keep her voice steady, though the words tasted like ash in her mouth. "I beg of you, we have nothing left. My people, they are dying. My children, they need a future." She glanced back at the two young faces standing behind her. Her children, barely old enough to understand the world they had been thrust into, stood silently in the shadows, clutching each other's hands. They were small and fragile, their faces still holding traces of innocence. The leader at the center of the table, a tall alien with smooth silver skin, shifted his gaze toward her. His eyes narrowed and his lips curved into a smile that sent a chill down Jara's spine. "Human," he said, his voice cold and mechanical. "Why would we care about your children? Why would we care about you?" Jara flinched but stood tall. She had rehearsed this moment in her mind 1,000 times, but it was different now, standing in front of the alien leaders. Her pulse hammered in her ears, but she refused to show fear. "We know," she said, "that your race desires perfection. We are weak, but we can serve you. I am willing to do anything. My children are well behaved. They can be useful. I can be whatever you need me to be." The words tasted bitter as they left her lips, but she had no choice. The alternative was the end of everything. Her children would die, her people would disappear, and there was no one left to save them. She had already lost everything. Now all she had left was this desperate plea for mercy. The alien leader's smile widened slightly, but there was no warmth in it. "You think your children can be useful to us? You think you can serve us?" Jara nodded, her eyes pleading. She wasn't asking for their kindness. She wasn't even asking for their mercy. She was asking for survival for her children, for her people, for the chance to live another day. We can serve you," Jara continued, her voice trembling, "but strong. We know your ways. We can help you with your conquest. We can do whatever it takes. Just please, don't let them die." The room was silent, and for a moment, Jara thought they might refuse her outright. She could see the other aliens, whispering amongst themselves, their voices too soft to understand. The tension in the room grew thick, like a cloud of smoke. Jara's heart sank. The thought of losing everything again was too much to bear. Finally, the alien leader spoke again, his voice colder than before. "Very well, human. We shall consider your offer." Jara's breath caught in her throat. She dared not speak, afraid that if she did, it would break the fragile thread of hope that had formed inside her. But then, just as quickly as it had begun, the meeting seemed to shift. The alien leader's eyes fixed on her children, who stood silently, too frightened to move. His gaze lingered, an unreadable expression crossing his face. Jara's heart skipped a beat. This ... offer of yours, the leader said slowly, is interesting. We will take it under consideration. But make no mistake, human. If we choose to accept, you will not be given mercy. You will serve us until we decide otherwise. Your fate, as well as that of your children, will be in our hands. Jara's stomach churned. She had no idea what they might do with her, what they might do to her children. But she had no choice. She had to play along. She had to survive. I understand, Jara whispered, her voice barely audible. Thank you ... for your consideration. The leader nodded, and the others stood, signaling the end of the meeting. Jara turned to leave, her children following closely behind. The cold, empty hall seemed even darker now, and the silence was deafening. She had made her plea. But in that moment, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: fear. The kind of fear that came with knowing that her fate and the fate of her children was no longer in her hands. As they walked down the long hallway, Jara's mind raced. She didn't know what would happen next, but she knew one thing for sure. Whatever came, she would face it head on. For her children, for humanity, for survival. And in the back of her mind, she couldn't shake the feeling that she had just made a deal with the devil himself. The stars were distant, cold, and indifferent, yet they flickered in the night sky above Jara's head, casting a pale light across the barren land. The wind howled through the ruined streets of the alien-controlled city, carrying with it the scent of dust and decay. Earth had been invaded, conquered in an instant, and yet humanity's struggle was far from over. Jara had once been proud of her home, of her planet. She remembered a time when Earth was alive with color, the hum of bustling cities, the sound of children laughing, and the feel of grass beneath bare feet. But that was before the alien ships descended from the heavens, before the sky turned black with their war machines. Now Earth was a place of ruin, a dying world under the boot of invaders. Her thoughts returned to the present as she stood in front of the small, crumbling building where the human resistance had set up base. Hidden from the alien forces, it had become a sanctuary of sorts, though even the walls seemed to whisper danger. Inside, a handful of soldiers, rebels, and survivors gathered. Among them was Captain Varin, the leader of the resistance, a man known for his bravery, but also his relentless drive to take back Earth. Jara's heart sank as she entered the room, and Varin's sharp gaze immediately locked onto her. It wasn't just distrust that filled his eyes, it was something much colder. The very moment she had been escorted into the rebel hideout, the tension had been palpable. You. Varin's voice was low, filled with a mixture of anger and suspicion. You're the one who just made a deal with the alien leaders, aren't you? Jara nodded, swallowing hard, her throat dry. Yes, she replied, trying to keep the tremor out of her voice. I had no choice. Varin's fist clenched at his side. You have no idea what you've done, do you? He spat. You've offered yourself and your children to them. You've given them the key to everything we've been fighting for. Jara didn't flinch. She had already heard the condemnation in Varin's voice, and she knew it was deserved. But the weight of survival pressed down on her, heavier than any guilt she felt. I offered nothing, Jara said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. I only begged for my children's lives, and for all of us survival. Varin stepped closer, his face inches from hers, anger burning in his eyes. Survival? He mocked. You think begging to be their slave will save you? It's exactly what they want. They'll use you. They'll use your children. Jara clenched her fists at her sides. She didn't come here for a lecture. She came for answers. What else can we do? She demanded. The alien forces have already wiped out entire cities. Our military is in shambles. I didn't come to fight. I came to help, to bring you information. The room fell silent as the words hung heavy in the air. The rebels exchanged uncertain glances. Some of them looked as though they wanted to believe her. Others, well, it was clear they weren't convinced. "You're not the first to come." "Here, Jara," Varun said, his voice quiet now, but no less dangerous. "We've had people before who thought they could work with the aliens, make a deal, survive. They're either dead or worse. The aliens do not make deals. They conquer. They kill. You're playing with fire." Jara's heart pounded in her chest. She understood the risk, but she had no other choice. "I didn't want this. But you need to understand I know their weaknesses, their systems, their vulnerabilities. I was once a part of their world. I know things that can help us strike back." Viren paused, his brow furrowing as he looked at her. He had seen enough of this war to know when someone was lying. He wasn't entirely sure if he could trust her, but the desperation in her voice was undeniable. "What are you suggesting?" he asked, his voice quieter now, almost curious. Jara's eyes darkened, and she looked over at her children, standing in the corner of the room, their small hands clasped together. She could see the fear in their eyes, the same fear that had haunted her every night since the invasion began. They had no idea what was coming, and it broke her heart to know that their future might be decided by the choices she made today. "There's a way," she said slowly. "A way to strike at the heart of their forces, but it's dangerous. It will take all of us. The aliens have a central command place where they direct their entire operation on Earth. If we can get to it, destroy it, we might have a chance of taking back control." The room was dead silent. Every rebel in the room knew that what Jara was suggesting was the most risky move yet. The aliens were powerful, their technology far beyond anything humanity had ever seen. For years, humans had been fighting for survival, for a glimmer of hope. But now Jara was offering them something far greater, the chance to end it all. Captain Viren paced back and forth, his mind racing. Finally, he stopped in front of Jara, his eyes hard and calculating. "You really think you can help us? You who just sold herself to them for your own survival?" Jara's voice cracked as she spoke again, the weight of her guilt sinking deeper into her bones. "I didn't sell myself. I made a choice. A choice I had to make. But I swear to you, I want to fight. I want to help. I can't undo what's been done, but I can help us win." Viren stared at her for a long moment. Then, without saying a word, he turned toward the group of rebels. "Get the equipment ready," he ordered, his voice low but steady. "We've got a mission." The soldiers nodded, their faces filled with uncertainty. But something in Viren's eyes, a glimmer of trust, told them that they were going to need everything they had if they were to succeed. They weren't just fighting the aliens anymore. They were fighting for their last chance at survival. Jara stood there, silent, watching them prepare. A part of her knew this was the moment that could change everything. The mission was risky. She was risking everything. But in her heart, she knew there was no turning back. The aliens might have conquered Earth, but humanity wasn't finished yet. The fight had only just begun. The moon hung high above the charred remnants of Earth, a silent observer to the wreckage below. The night air crackled with tension as Jara and the small group of rebels trekked through the underground tunnels beneath their secret base. The walls, covered in damp moss and blackened by years of conflict, seemed to pulse with an energy that matched the mood in the air. Something big was about to happen. Jara's heart raced as she walked beside Captain Viren, her footsteps echoing off the stone like a drumbeat of impending doom. This wasn't just any mission. This was the final chance to stop the alien scourge, to take down the heart of their empire, and it all hinged on a secret weapon that Jara had been holding back. For weeks, she had kept this knowledge locked away, buried in her mind like a well-guarded treasure. But now, there was no more time for secrets. The humans had been fighting an uphill battle for so long. It was time to reveal the truth. Viren's sharp eyes scanned the surroundings, his senses on high alert. "Where are we going?" he asked, his voice low, barely a whisper against the distant hum of alien drones above. "And what's this weapon you've been hiding?" Jara didn't look at him. Her focus was on the narrow path ahead, the flickering lights casting strange shadows along the walls. It wasn't fear in her eyes, it was something far colder. Something dangerous. "We're going to the old network. The one that was buried when the invasion began. It's been abandoned, but it holds the key to their downfall." Varen stopped in his tracks, eyes narrowing. "I thought that was destroyed during the first wave." "What network are you talking about?" Jara hesitated, glancing at the floor, where her shadow stretched out before her like a dark omen. The truth, once spoken, would be inescapable. There was no turning back from this. "It wasn't destroyed," she said quietly. "The aliens didn't find it. It's a communications hub, hidden deep beneath the surface. When Earth fell, they assumed it was useless. But it's still functional. It has the potential to disrupt their entire communication grid, and, Varen pressed, stepping closer. His expression was a mixture of curiosity and skepticism, but the fire in his eyes told Jara that he was desperate for any edge they could get, and Jara took a deep breath, the weight of what she was about to reveal pulling her chest tight. "It contains a virus. A program we developed before the invasion, a virus designed to cripple the alien networks. The virus was meant to disable their weapons, their ships, their entire system. It's our greatest weapon." The words hung in the air like a fragile hope. Varen's expression faltered for a second, disbelief crossing his features before he quickly masked it. "A virus? And you kept this from us?" His voice was sharp, but there was no anger in it. Just a quiet, cautious hope. Jara could see the skepticism in his eyes. She could hear the questions forming in his mind. Why had she hidden this? Why had she not told them sooner? The answer was simple. She hadn't trusted them or herself. She hadn't been sure if it would work. And she hadn't been sure if she could trust them with it. After all, the fate of the world rested in their hands now. We didn't know if it would work, Jara said, answering his unspoken question. The virus was unfinished. It was dangerous, too dangerous. But now ... we don't have a choice. Varen studied her face carefully, his gaze piercing through the layers of uncertainty and fear that clouded her own. He nodded slowly, finally, accepting the gravity of her words. If this virus is our only hope, then we'll make it work. The air grew thick with silence as the rebels continued their march. Each step carried them deeper into the labyrinth of tunnels, each turn bringing them closer to the heart of the alien network. Jara could feel the eyes of the soldiers on her, their trust in her wavering, but she couldn't afford to care. She had to see this through. For her children. For humanity. As they reached the center of the network, an old rusted door slid open with a loud creak, revealing a dark chamber filled with humming servers and wires that seemed to pulse with life. The technology was alien, an eerie blend of organic and mechanical, like something that had grown from the very bones of the planet itself. Jara motioned for the group to follow her inside. Her breath caught in her throat as she stood before the terminal, her fingers trembling as she activated the control panel. She had not accessed the system in years, but the familiar interface soon blinked to life, casting a green glow across the room. "Here it is," she whispered. "This is where we can deploy the virus." Varen stepped forward, his voice low but filled with determination. "How do we do it?" Jara's fingers flew over the terminal, her mind racing with the sequence of commands needed to unleash the virus. "We need to initiate the program," she said, her voice tight. "Once we do, it will send the virus throughout their entire network. It will take their systems offline. But it will also trigger an alarm. They'll know we've hacked them." Varen nodded. "So it's now or never." Jara turned to him, her eyes locking onto his with a sense of finality. "We have no choice. If we fail, everything is over." Her fingers hovered over the command prompt, hesitating for just a moment. The pressure was overwhelming. This was their last chance. If she failed now, there would be no turning back. But if it worked, the fate of Earth would rest in their hands. With a steady breath, Jara pressed the button. Initiating. Hum of the room shifted. The air charged with anticipation. For a split second, nothing happened. And then the terminals around them flickered, one by one. The virus was alive. The room was colder than usual. The faint hum of machinery was the only sound that filled the air. Jara stood near the terminal, staring at the flickering screen in front of her, the digital countdown flashing relentlessly. The virus is active. It was no longer just a weapon, it was a message. A defiance. But even as her heart pounded with both fear and hope, a deep unease gnawed at the back of her mind. The silence felt suffocating, and the weight of the choice she had made threatened to crush her. The rebels had put their trust in her. She had offered them hope, but at what cost? She glanced over at Captain Varun, who stood across the room, his jaw tight with the tension of the moment. His soldiers were busy checking equipment, preparing for the next phase of their mission. Jara's hands trembled slightly as she wiped a strand of hair from her face. Varun noticed and walked toward her, his eyes sharp and filled with a quiet, unspoken question. The tension between them had grown since the virus was deployed. It wasn't just about the mission anymore, it was about trust. Jara, Varun said, his voice low. We're taking a risk, a big one. I need to know, are you sure this virus is the only way? Because once we've done this, there's no going back. The aliens will come for us. Jara looked up at him, her breath catching in her throat. Her stomach churned, but she didn't look away, I'm sure. It's our best shot. I've seen their system. This is the one thing they never expected. They'll scramble to fix it, but they won't be able to stop it in time. If we can get to their core network, we can disrupt everything. Communication, defense systems, everything. Varun nodded, but his expression remained unreadable. There was something in his eyes that Jara couldn't quite decipher. Was it suspicion? Or was it something else? Maybe it was the uncertainty that clung to them all now. They had no idea what they would face after this. The alien forces were unpredictable and deadly. You've made your choice, Varun said, the words weighing heavily in the air. Now we have to make ours. Jara swallowed hard. Her eyes flicked to her children, still standing in the corner, their small forms barely visible in the dim light. They hadn't fully understood the depth of what was happening, but they had felt the shift. They could sense the danger just as she could. I know, Jara replied quietly. I'm ready. Varun studied her for a long moment before turning toward the group of rebels. He gave a short nod, signaling for them to prepare. The room buzzed with quiet activity. The air crackled with the intensity of the situation, and, for a brief moment, Jara felt herself caught between two worlds. One was a past she couldn't return to, a world where Earth was free, and the other was the present, a dark, uncertain future where survival was no longer guaranteed. The sound of footsteps approaching snapped her back to the present. Tara, one of the older soldiers in the group, walked up to Jara, her face set in a grim line. Tara had always been skeptical of Jara's involvement, and her mistrust was clear in every glance, every comment. Tara, Jara said, trying to meet her gaze, you're not sure about me. I get it, but I'm asking you to trust me now. This, Varus, it's our chance. Tara's lips tightened. Trust you? She repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. The moment you struck a deal with the aliens, you lost my trust. But right now, she paused, looking over at the terminal. The flickering lights cast an eerie glow on her face. Right now, I'm not sure we have a choice. But make no mistake, Jara, you're walking a fine line. You're either leading us to salvation, or you're dragging us into our graves. Jara didn't know how to respond. Tara's words cut deeper than she expected. But she didn't have time for apologies or explanations. The rebels had made their choice, and so had she. All they could do now was move forward, together. As the rebels prepared for the next phase of their mission, Jara's mind raced. The core network they needed to infiltrate was heavily guarded, and the aliens would stop at nothing to protect it. Jara had already betrayed them once. Would they trust her again? The thought gnawed at her. The knowledge that if they failed, the lives of her children and the entire resistance would be over. Varin's voice broke through her thoughts, pulling her from her reverie. "Everyone, we move out in 5 minutes," he ordered, his voice hard and commanding. "Jara, we need you to lead the way. Your knowledge of their systems is our advantage. Don't let us down." Jara nodded, her heart hammering in her chest. She had no choice but to lead them into the heart of enemy territory. But she had made one promise to herself that she couldn't break. Not this time. She would not let them down. The rebels formed a tight circle, gathering around Jara as they prepared for the final push. The tension in the room was palpable. No one spoke, but the weight of what they were about to do hung heavily in the air. They were all risking their lives. Some of them, Jara knew, would not make it out alive. "Stay close and follow my lead," Jara said, her voice steady despite the chaos inside her mind. "We'll get through this, together." Viren placed a hand on her shoulder, his gaze steady and serious. "Just remember," he said softly, "you've earned our trust, but the price is high. Don't forget that." The weight of his words was not lost on Jara. She had earned their trust, but only because she had proven herself capable. And now she had to make sure she didn't lose it. This mission was more than just about surviving. It was about something deeper, a redemption perhaps, a way to make up for the choices she had made. But deep inside, Jara knew the truth. She was walking a fine line between saving humanity and damning them all. As the team made their way through the dark tunnels, a quiet dread settled in her chest. The sound of boots on the ground was the only noise that broke the silence. But there was something else, something Jara couldn't shake. The feeling of eyes watching them. Eyes that were far from friendly. The air had thickened, suffocating the group with an unspoken tension that buzzed like static in the back of Jara's mind. The underground passageways twisted like a labyrinth, their walls damp and covered in the slick sheen of time and neglect. The only sound was the shuffle of boots against the cold stone floors and the occasional crackle from the comms units nestled in their ears. Jara led the way, her every step calculated, her heart thrumming in her chest with both anticipation and dread. They were getting closer to the alien core. The deeper they went, the more palpable the danger became. But she could feel it, the eyes that followed them from the shadows, the stillness of the air, the knowledge that their every move was being watched. A wave of unease washed over her. Something wasn't right. Varin's low voice cut through the silence, his words directed at the group ahead of them. "Keep your eyes sharp. We're not alone down here." Jara's head whipped toward him. His eyes were scanning the shadows, alert but calm. His tone was steady, but there was an edge to it now, a suspicion that hadn't been there before. "Jara," Tara's voice came from behind, her tone tense. "We've been in these tunnels for hours. Are you sure this is the right way?" Jara turned, meeting her gaze. Tara's expression was tight, her hand resting on the hilt of her weapon. Jara's mind flickered with the growing sense of doubt that had been gnawing at her. The path had seemed so certain. The network was supposed to be close, but now she was questioning everything. "I'm sure," Jara replied, though her voice was far less confident than she wanted it to be. She couldn't afford to show weakness. "We're almost there." But she wasn't convinced herself. She could feel something shifting in the air, an almost imperceptible change. It was as if the tunnels themselves had turned against them, closing in with every step. As they rounded a corner, the faint glow of lights flickered in the distance, an ominous greenish hue that made her skin prickle. The alien core was close, and that's when it happened. There was a sharp metallic sound, a hiss, almost like the opening of a door. Jara's head whipped around just in time to see a shadow dart across the far end of the tunnel. Without thinking, she shouted, "Ambush!" Too late. The walls of the tunnel exploded with movement. Alien soldiers, their pale blue forms glowing faintly, emerged from the shadows like predators closing in on their prey. There was no hesitation in their movements, just cold, calculated precision. Jara's heart slammed against her ribs, and for a split second, time seemed to freeze. The aliens were everywhere. Jara didn't hesitate. She grabbed her weapon and fired, sending a burst of energy into the closest alien soldier. The beam of light searing through the air, but the creature barely flinched. It turned its glowing eyes toward her with an expression of clinical curiosity, like a specimen under examination. "Fall back!" Varen yelled, his voice sharp with urgency, snapping everyone out of their shock. The rebels scrambled, but Jara didn't move right away. Her eyes were locked on the alien soldiers, scanning for any weaknesses, any opening. But there was none. They were too well coordinated, too efficient. "Jara!" Terra shouted again, grabbing her arm and pulling her back. Jara snapped out of her trance, finally taking a step backward, but not before catching a glimpse of something that sent a chill down her spine. One of the alien soldiers wasn't attacking. He was standing at the back, just out of range. His eyes locked on her dot, and then it hit her. This wasn't an ambush dot, it was a trap. And they had walked right into it. The soldiers continued to fire, but the aliens were relentless, their energy blasts pushing them back toward a narrow, dead-end corridor. Jara's mind raced. If they couldn't hold the line, they would be trapped. And if they couldn't fight their way out, they would be dead. But something else gnawed at her, an unsettling thought that had been lurking in the back of her mind for too long. Someone had betrayed them. She caught a glimpse of Terra, her face drawn tight with fear and determination, trying to fire her weapon but clearly outmatched. Varen was barking orders, trying to keep the rebels together. But even he couldn't hide. The panic in his eyes, Jara's mind flashed back to something she had overheard earlier, in the quiet moments before they'd left. There had been a murmur in the command center, a conversation Jara hadn't quite understood. It was too soft, too quick, but the words had lingered in her mind. "We have to make sure Jara is kept in check. She's the key." But whose key? Her thoughts were interrupted by the sudden explosion of light as an alien blast collided with the wall beside her. The force sent her sprawling to the ground, her head spinning. She fought to get up, her vision swimming, but a pair of alien soldiers were already advancing on her dot then. As if by some miracle, a burst of gunfire rang out from behind her, cutting down the two aliens with incredible precision. She turned to see Terra, her face grim but resolute, now standing directly behind her with a fresh weapon in hand. "Stay focused," Terra growled, extending a hand to help her up. But there was something strange in her eyes. A glint almost. Too subtle to notice, but unmistakable once it registered. Terra wasn't helping her. Terra was keeping her in line. For a split second, Jara's mind flashed to the moment before the ambush. Was it just a coincidence that the trap had sprung when it did? Could someone on the inside have tipped off the aliens about their plan? And just like that, everything clicked into place. Terra wasn't just a soldier in the resistance. Terra had been working with the aliens all along. Jara's breath caught in her throat. She couldn't believe it, but the signs were undeniable now. The way Terra had moved earlier, how she was the first to grab her arm when they were getting cornered, the way she kept an unnervingly calm focus amidst the chaos, it was all part of the act. Jara's hand instinctively went to the small device. In her pocket, the last part of the virus code she hadn't activated yet. This was it. The moment of truth. She had no choice now. With a swift motion, Jara activated the device and silently whispered to herself, We're not done yet. The virus was still alive and it was about to rewrite everything. The explosion echoed in the narrow tunnel, rattling the walls and shaking the ground beneath Jara's feet. A thin haze of smoke and dust swirled in the air as the rebels scrambled to regroup. The alien soldiers, relentless and unyielding, moved. In like a flood, their eerie, glowing forms standing out against the gloom of the underground. Jara's heart was pounding in her chest as she glanced around, her mind racing. The mission was falling apart faster than she could process, and her betrayal was staring her right in the face. Tara, her gaze flicked to the soldier now crouched beside her, scanning the area for more threats. Tara wasn't just a bystander in this chaos. She was the orchestrator, but why? What had turned her against them? Against Earth? It took a moment for Jara to shake off the paralysis. In the midst of the battle, with gunfire and explosions filling the air, it was easy to lose focus. But she had to snap out of it. The mission wasn't over. Not yet. Varin's shout broke through her haze. Jara, we need to fall back to the secondary exit, now. She hesitated, looking toward the alien forces closing in on them. There was no chance they'd make it to the exit alive without reinforcements. And reinforcements weren't coming. Not in time. Then something strange happened. The aliens paused. Just for a second. The air in the tunnel grew thick, a low, almost imperceptible hum vibrating through the walls. Jara felt a cold shiver run down her spine. The aliens were regrouping. But it wasn't just about regrouping. It was about something far more sinister. The feeling she had earlier, the one that made her question everything, wasn't paranoia. It was real. They were waiting for something. She turned to Tara, eyes locked with the soldiers for the first time in what felt like an eternity. There was no fear in Tara's eyes, no hesitation. Just cold certainty. And something darker, something Jara couldn't quite place. Tara, Jara said, her voice steady but her heart racing. What are you really doing here? This wasn't part of the plan. You betrayed us. For a moment, Tara didn't answer. She just stared at her, her eyes cold, calculating. Then, as if the words she had been holding back were finally too much to suppress, Tara spoke. It wasn't supposed to be like this, Tara said quietly, her voice barely audible over the distant sounds of battle. But you've always been too naive, Jara. You see everything as black and white. You never understood the bigger picture. Jara's stomach twisted, dread pooling at the pit of her stomach. What are you talking about? Tara's lips curled into something that might have been a smile if it weren't so chilling. You think this is about saving Earth? Saving humanity? That's your mistake. Humanity's dead, Jara. The sooner you realize that, the better. Jara's heart skipped a beat. Her thoughts raced, crashing together like a storm. You've been working with them all along? You've been helping the aliens? Tara's eyes flicked toward the alien soldiers in the distance, her expression shifting for the briefest moment, like a fleeting shadow of guilt. Then, just as quickly, it was gone, replaced by cold conviction. I was never one of them. I've always had my own agenda. Her gaze turned back to Jara. But yes, I've been helping them. Not because I want to destroy Earth, but because I know the truth. Humanity is a dying species, Jara. A broken, decaying mess. The aliens didn't invade to destroy us. They came to save us from ourselves. Jara's mind reeled. She couldn't fathom what Tara was saying. The woman she had fought beside for years, the woman who had shared the same struggle, was now speaking words that made no sense. Her throat went dry. What do you mean, save us from ourselves? Tara's eyes softened for just a split second. The aliens know something we don't, Jara. They know how to rebuild, how to erase the rot that's taken root in humanity's soul. You've been fighting for survival. But the real fight is about something much deeper than just living. It's about evolution. Jara shook her head, her hands trembling at her sides. "You're insane. This is madness." Tara took a step closer, lowering her voice to a near whisper. "The virus you've unleashed, it's not just a weapon, is it? You thought you were saving Earth, but what you did, what you activated ... it's a trap. A cure for a disease we never understood. A disease that the aliens have been working to eradicate." Jara's breath caught in her throat. "A cure for what? What are you talking about?" Tara smiled again, the expression colder than before. "For humanity's corruption. For your pride, your greed, your war-hungry hearts. You thought you were going to defeat the aliens? You were never meant to. They were here to cleanse the Earth, and you were just a tool in their plan." Jara's head spun. Every word Tara spoke felt like a slap to the face. Everything she had believed, everything she had fought for. Was it all a lie? Varen's voice suddenly cut through the confusion, loud and urgent. "Jara, we need to move now." The moment of revelation shattered into chaos. Jara's instincts kicked in. There was no more time for questioning, no more time for trying to make sense of Tara's cryptic words. The aliens were closing in, and their weapons were far too advanced for the resistance to fight head-on. Her fingers went to the device in her pocket. She had one chance left. Jara didn't look back at Tara. The betrayal hurt, but there was no room for hesitation. The virus had to finish what it started. She activated the final sequence. The world seemed to hold its breath, and then the walls of the tunnel began to shake. The ground beneath Jara's feet trembled as the final sequence of the virus pulsed through the alien network. The hum that had once echoed in the tunnels intensified, growing louder until it was a bone-shaking vibration. The walls groaned under the pressure, and the lights flickered erratically. For a brief moment, the entire world felt like it was holding its breath, waiting for the inevitable. Jara's pulse hammered in her throat. Her hands clenched tightly around the device. The final line of code she had initiated was more than just a weapon. It was a signal, a trigger that would set everything in motion. The alien network, their communication systems, their entire infrastructure, it would all collapse under the weight of the virus. But as the countdown ticked closer to completion, a wave of cold dread washed over her. What if it was too late? She had seen the effects of the virus before, seen how it had incapacitated alien drones and crippled their lesser systems. But this was different. The stakes were higher now. Far higher. A voice broke through the swirling thoughts in her mind. "Jara." It was Varun. His voice was low, almost ragged, as if he too could feel the enormity of what was unfolding. He had moved closer, his figure barely visible in the haze of smoke and dust that was swirling around them. The tension in the air had reached a point where every breath felt labored, every movement a struggle against the tide. "We need to leave. Now they're coming." His eyes were wide with fear, and for the first time, Jara saw the uncertainty that had always been hidden beneath his military composure. Jara didn't answer right away. She was still staring at the device in her hand, watching as the final sequence processed, her mind racing for the next move. The alien soldiers had been closing in on them for what felt like hours. But now, with the virus in motion, everything had changed. "We don't have time," Varun continued, his voice tight, shaking with a mixture of anger and desperation. "The aliens, they know what we're doing. They'll stop at nothing to wipe us out. They're not just soldiers, they're hunters." Jara looked up at him, her eyes wide with an intensity she hadn't felt in years. "I know, but if we don't finish this, if we don't make sure the virus reaches the core, we'll never win. Humanity will never survive." Varen looked at her for a moment, his jaw clenched, as if weighing the decision in his mind. The tension between them was almost palpable, an invisible line that neither of them dared to cross. But that had been drawn in their relationship ever since the first day Jara had taken charge of the rebellion. They both knew what was at stake. But now, more than ever, It felt like they were standing on the edge of a precipice. Before Varen could respond, something shifted in the air. The vibrations, once subtle, now became deafening. The walls buckled, and a strange, eerie glow began to pulse from deep within the tunnel. The aliens' presence had intensified. They were closing in. The lights blinked out, plunging them into a sea of darkness. Then, just as suddenly, they flickered back on. Only this time, everything was different. The air smelled metallic, like burning ozone, and the walls seemed to hum with an unnatural energy. It was as though the entire tunnel had come alive, reacting to the virus Jara had unleashed. Her breath caught in her throat. This wasn't just an attack, it was a counterattack. A deep, resonant voice echoed through the walls of the tunnel, its source impossible to pinpoint. But its message was crystal clear. You should not have done that. Jara froze. It wasn't just the alien soldiers speaking. This was something else. A presence, sentient and cold, like a shadow cast over her very soul. Who are you? Jara managed to ask, her voice a whisper. A low laugh reverberated through the tunnel, sent chills running down her spine. I am the voice of the network. The core, the intelligence that guides us. And now, you have awakened me. It was then that Jara realized what was happening. The virus hadn't just crippled the alien infrastructure, it had triggered something far more dangerous than she could have ever imagined. It had awakened their central consciousness. The aliens weren't a scattered force anymore. They weren't just an invasion fleet. They had been connected, unified. And now, with the virus inside their core, they were aware of her, of them. The rebellion, Earth, the resistance, and they were angry. The entire tunnel seemed to vibrate. With an almost mechanical precision, the walls creaking as though they might collapse at any moment. The sound of alien footsteps, once faint, now grew louder rapidly. The alien soldiers weren't just attacking. They were flooding the tunnel. Varen stepped closer, his eyes wide with realization. We're running out of time. They're adapting. The virus, it's not enough. They're evolving faster than we can react. Jara's mind whirled. The core had evolved. It had anticipated their moves. The virus had given them exactly what they wanted, the final key to unlocking their full potential. And now it was turning the tables. The rebellion had played into their hands. A cold fury surged through her veins. She couldn't let this happen. They couldn't lose now, not after everything they had fought for. She turned to Varen, her expression fierce. We're not running, not yet. There's one more thing the virus can do. One more sequence. If we can reach their central node and deploy it, we'll disrupt their consciousness. They won't be able to act as a unified force anymore. We'll break them. Varen shook his head, eyes flashing with doubt. Are you sure? What if this only makes them worse? There's no other choice, Jara said, determination stealing her voice. We finish this now, or we die trying. With no more words, she grabbed his arm and yanked him toward the deeper tunnels, where the faint, pulsating glow of the central node beckoned like the heartbeat of a dying giant. They ran through the chaos, the alien forces closing in on every side. The tunnel was alive with alien voices, now its walls reverberating with a strange, almost human-like cry of rage and pain. They could feel the weight of the entire network on their shoulders, the pressure building, the air thick with the knowledge that every second they wasted would be their last. Jara reached for the device, her fingers trembling as she activated the final, crucial sequence. Then, with a deep, resonating pulse, the world around them stopped. And for a brief, fleeting moment, everything was silent.